The frigid winter air bit into Tommy's skin as he trudged through the snow, the dim light of dusk casting an eerie glow on the barren landscape. He approached an abandoned two-story home, its creaky wooden door barely holding on by its hinges. With a mighty shove, Tommy pushed against the door, its groans of protest piercing the silent night. From the depths of the woods, Tommy's brother Nate shouted for him to hurry up. As Nate's swift strides carried him closer, the door suddenly gave way with a loud crack, sending both brothers tumbling into the musty interior of the home. The wind howled outside, rattling the door and windows as the siblings caught their breath. Tommy's arms ached from the effort, and he couldn't help but complain to his brother. "I'll never go on another adventure with you again," he grumbled, tugging on Nate's heavy jacket to pull him closer for warmth. Nate brushed off the snow from his jacket and face, a satisfied smirk on his lips. "At least we got the jewel," he said, surveying the dilapidated home. Tommy couldn't believe the events that had led them to this point. "That psycho shot the witch," he muttered in disbelief. "A witch? Can't believe it." "Probably just a crackhead," Nate said nonchalantly. Tommy couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled in his gut. "Then where the hell did the red mist come from?" Nate shrugged. "I don't know, but we're safe for now." Tommy stood by the fogged window, his eyes scanning the surroundings for any signs of danger. Despite the wool gloves, he still shivered uncontrollably, while Nate seemed unaffected by the biting cold. Tommy longed for the warmth of his own bed, wrapped in a cozy blanket. Regret filled his mind as he thought back to how they had obtained the map from their superior, and how Nate's janitorial background had come in handy for sneaking into the university president's office. Now, they were stuck in this abandoned home, with no clear way out. Tommy wondered if it had been worth the risk after all. As Nate gestured towards an old portrait of a tall, skeletal figure draped in a mysterious cloak, he let out a chuckle and exclaimed, "Check this out." Tommy, his brother, however, was unimpressed by the outdated jokes that Nate frequently made. Nate was always ready with a good joke, and it had become a part of their lives. But Tommy had heard it all before, and was already tired of it. He turned to the window and then back to the portrait, only to realize something strange about it. The slender figure in the portrait had a large, sparkling red gemstone set in a chain around its neck. "That's the witch," Tommy exclaimed as he pointed at the gem. Nate tilted his head and examined the portrait more closely. "How do you know?" he asked. "Look at the jewel," Tommy replied, extending his hand. "Let me see it." Nate mimicked Tommy's attitude and reached into his pocket, but his face turned pale as he realized he had a hole in his pants. "Oh shit! I think I lost it!" he exclaimed in panic. Tommy held his head in shock. "Are you kidding me?" he said. Nate rummaged through his other pocket and gave a goofy smile as he took out a lump concealed in a thin cloth. He removed the cloth, revealing a blood-colored gem. Tommy snatched it from his hand and gave it a closer look. The gem glimmered and glistened, drawing their eyes into a trance. Tommy looked back at the portrait and gestured towards Nate, who also turned to look at the portrait to confirm. "Now I see," Nate said as he took the jewel back and shoved it into his pocket. "My students will never believe we found this," Tommy said, as he settled into a creaking wooden chair, adjusted his curly hair, and wiped some snow off his beard. "I can't believe you're still an adjunct after almost 5 years, Nate remarked as he leaned against the wall next to the portrait. "Aren't you still being paid shit?" "I like teaching," Tommy replied with a smile. "It's not worth it," Nate said with a sigh. "But being a janitor is?" Tommy asked incredulously. "I don't enjoy it, but at least the pay is decent," Nate replied, his arms outstretched as he paced around the room. Tommy considered his brother's words for a moment before offering his own suggestion. "Why not do something you actually like, even if it pays less?" Nate shook his head. "Like what, Tommy? Playing video games all day? We'd never be able to make rent on time." Tommy nodded in agreement, understanding the harsh reality of their financial situation. Nate's frustration was palpable as he continued speaking. "That's why I needed to get this jewel." As they spoke, the sound of 2 men approaching the house interrupted their conversation. "They can't be far," one of them said. "Check over there." "Shit! They're here!" Tommy exclaimed, causing Nate to panic as he searched for an escape route. Thinking quickly, Tommy spotted a large tabletop and began pulling on it, attempting to move it in front of the door. Nate rushed over to help, each of them grabbing onto one side and dragging it towards the front door. "Come on!" Tommy urged, leading the way towards a broken staircase and up to the attic. Outside, the wind howled and snow continued to fall heavily. Ed and Leo struggled to make their way towards the front door, with Ed slamming into it but failing to open it. "Open this damn door," he demanded. Leo, frustrated and angry, drew his pistol from his pants. "I'll just shoot the knob off," he said, but Ed quickly intervened, grabbing his wrists. "What the hell are you doing?" he asked, trying to calm his brother down. "We need to get inside, and fast," Leo replied, his anger still palpable. "It seems to be obstructed by something. Firing at it won't be effective," Ed remarked before coughing harshly. He could feel the prickling sensation of the red hairs on the back of his scrawny neck, which extended to his back. Leo looked at him with concern, asking if he was all right. "That damn witch," Ed said in a hoarse voice as he coughed up a chunk of bloody phlegm. A sharp pain erupted from his right arm, which was so unbearable that he took off his jacket to examine it. He noticed an oozing, infected scar that sprawled across his shoulder and down to his elbow. "We need to get out of here now," Leo said urgently. "But I want the jewel," Ed replied stubbornly. "Forget about the jewel, man. Your health is more important. We made a deal, but this isn't worth it," Leo insisted, gesturing towards Ed's wounded arm. Ed clutched his abdomen in agony and fell to his knees, screaming. Concerned, Leo rushed to assist him while Tommy and Nate searched for a hiding place. The attic floorboards creaked with rot and were missing chunks here and there. Empty bottles of potion, shards of crystals, and broken chimes were scattered throughout the room. Tommy looked out the large window facing the backyard and saw a vision of a snow-draped rooftop through the heavy snowfall. Meanwhile, Nate opened a large closet filled with dirty old veils and cloaks, causing a wretched smell to fill his nose and overwhelm him. He gagged at the stench. Nate pinches his nose as he steps into the room, recoiling at the overwhelming stench. "What died in here?" he exclaims, crinkling his face in disgust. "It smells worse than the dead rats I found at the college campus." Tommy, who had already entered the room, chuckles dryly. "I thought you should be used to it by now." Ignoring his brother's comment, Nate starts to undress, revealing a determined expression. "We should hide in here," he declares. Tommy raises an eyebrow in confusion. "What? Hell no." Nate looks at him incredulously. "Do you not play video games? We can open the window, and when they come in, they'll think we jumped off." Tommy shakes his head. "Listen to me, my silly little brother. It won't work." Feeling frustrated, Nate scans the room for a weapon and spots a broken broomstick. "Then we'll fight," he says with a fierce determination. Tommy rolls his eyes. "Yeah, we're dead." Suddenly, a barrage of gunfire shatters the tense silence outside, causing Tommy and Nate to hit the floor immediately. The deafening sound of gunfire suddenly ceases, and the two brothers exchange a worried glance. Nate cautiously looks around the room, still clutching the broomstick tightly. Did it stop? He wonders. "I don't know," Tommy whispers, his eyes darting around frantically. "But I don't want to check." Without warning, the window explodes, and shards of glass rain down on them. As they slowly look up, they are greeted with the grisly sight of Leo's decapitated head. "Holy shit!" Nate screams in horror. Just then, a dark figure swiftly crawls through the broken window, causing the brothers to freeze in terror. Tommy and his brother were frozen in fear as they stared out the window, wondering what had just happened. "What the hell was that?" Tommy exclaimed. Suddenly, the front door flung open, causing a shelf to crash out of sight, and an imposing figure advanced menacingly towards them. The figure was tall and bulky, with dark fur and bulging yellow slit eyes that seemed to pierce the darkness. Blood drooled out of its canine jaw, and it carried a headless body by the belt before hurling it across the room and dropping a gun. Nate let out a yelp, but Tommy quickly clamped his hand over his brother's mouth to muffle the sound. They sprinted towards the stairs, jumping down each cracked step. As they retreated, they walked backwards into the attic, hiding in the darkness away from the werewolf. Tommy let go of Nate, who instantly panicked. Tommy clamped Nate's mouth again and held up a finger to his mouth. This was the first time they had ever felt their lives were on the line, aside from the witch they had encountered before. The witch didn't seem threatening, acting more like a crackhead in the ghettos of Brooklyn. She danced in place, making animal noises as if trying to call for a mate. Nate couldn't shake the image of Leo shooting the witch in the stomach after noticing the red mist surrounding her. As Tommy took the jewel, the red mist evaporated, and the brothers sprinted away. But now, They had never thought they would encounter a beast of this size or nature, a freak of nature that seemed unreal at first glance. The menacing footsteps only made things more frightening for the brothers as they tried to come up with a way to escape. Tommy considered jumping out of the window, but Nate remembered the feeling of being trapped on a malfunctioning Ferris wheel so high up he feared heights ever since. Tommy insisted that jumping out of the window was the best way to go if they wanted to get out alive. Nate remembered seeing a gun fall off the dead body and decided he should take it. As an English teacher, Nate's lack of horror logic annoyed Tommy. Of all the books I teach, I have yet to see a werewolf die from anything other than silver. What are the chances of a silver bullet being in the magazine clip, let alone in the chamber? Tommy said. Tommy and his brother were frozen in fear as they stared out the window, wondering what had just happened. "What the hell was that?" Tommy exclaimed. Suddenly, the front door flung open, causing a shelf to crash out of sight, and an imposing figure advanced menacingly towards them. The figure was tall and bulky, with dark fur and bulging yellow slit eyes that seemed to pierce the darkness. Blood drooled out of its canine jaw, and it carried a headless body by the belt before hurling it across the room and dropping a gun. Nate let out a yelp, but Tommy quickly clamped his hand over his brother's mouth to muffle the sound. They sprinted towards the stairs, jumping down each cracked step. As they retreated, they walked backwards into the attic, hiding in the darkness away from the werewolf. Tommy let go of Nate, who instantly panicked. Tommy clamped Nate's mouth again and held up a finger to his mouth. This was the first time they had ever felt their lives were on the line, aside from the witch they had encountered before. The witch didn't seem threatening, acting more like a crackhead in the ghettos of Brooklyn. She danced in place, making animal noises as if trying to call for a mate. Nate couldn't shake the image of Leo shooting the witch in the stomach after noticing the red mist surrounding her. As Tommy took the jewel, the red mist evaporated, and the brothers sprinted away. But now, they had never thought they would encounter a beast of this size or nature, a freak of nature that seemed unreal at first glance. The menacing footsteps only made things more frightening for the brothers as they tried to come up with a way to escape. Tommy considered jumping out of the window, but Nate remembered the feeling of being trapped on a malfunctioning Ferris wheel so high up he feared heights ever since. Tommy insisted that jumping out of the window was the best way to go if they wanted to get out alive. Nate remembered seeing a gun fall off the dead body and decided he should take it. As an English teacher, Nate's lack of horror logic annoyed Tommy. Of all the books I teach, I have yet to see a werewolf die from anything other than silver. What are the chances of a silver bullet being in the magazine clip, let alone in the chamber? Tommy said. With a pained groan, Nate struggled to move his aching back as he reached out to his brother, desperate to help, but unsure how. His eyes darted around, searching for anything that might be of use, but found nothing. "Shit, Tommy," he muttered, frustration clear in his voice. "Hold on to me." Tommy wrapped his arm around Nate and attempted to lift him up, but his knee popped, sending a sharp jolt of pain through his body. As if that weren't enough, Nate's back gave out, leaving the two of them stranded and vulnerable. Suddenly, a piercing howl echoed from the roof above them. A werewolf, standing tall and fierce, jumped down to the roof and positioned itself above the brothers. In the commotion, a jewel that had been hanging on the roof's edge fell to the ground below, creating a faint thud as it landed in the snow. The werewolf's ears perked up in curiosity as it hopped down to investigate the jewel. But just as it reached for it, a ghostly white hand appeared out of nowhere, snatching the jewel away and leaving the werewolf bewildered. As the brothers watched, a pale witch emerged, her skin seemingly unscathed despite the bloody white veil she wore. With ease, she cracked open the jewel, causing a soft red mist to fill the air. The mist reached out for the werewolf, causing it to howl in agony and clutch its stomach in pain. It transformed back into Ed, scarred all over and lying dead in the snow. The brothers stood frozen, eyes wide with horror, as they witnessed the scene unfold. The red mist then crept towards them, but they instinctively tried to avoid it. As the mist engulfed them, they felt a refreshing chill on their skin, and their wounds began to heal. The mist filled them with warmth and energy, leaving them feeling revitalized. Dazed by the unexpected turn of events, they looked at each other in amazement and realized that their injuries had vanished. They looked around and saw that the witch had disappeared, but the pieces of the shattered jewel remained. "Let's grab it and get the hell out of here," Nate suggested, eager to leave the eerie scene behind. Tommy agreed. You know, this time I actually agree with you, he said, quickly snatching the 2 pieces of the jewel from Nate and shoving them into his jacket. Fix that hole in your pocket, he added with a wry grin. Nate gave him a narrow-eyed stare but said nothing. Together the brothers trudged through the snowy forest, the biting wind and stinging snowflakes assaulting them. Summer can't come soon enough, Tommy grumbled, eager for some warmth and respite from the harsh conditions.